Welcome to my channel. My name is Sinead. Today we're going to be talking about my favorite books of 2019. In 2019, I read 35 books. I had a goal to read about 75, but I slowed down about mid-year because I found podcasts and I went down this rabbit hole for like 3 or 4 months of just listening to podcasts. And that really hindered my reading goal for the year. So now that I'm all caught up on my podcast, I am fully confident that 2020 will be a good year for reading, and I'm implementing some new things in my daily life so that I reach my goal of reading at least 50 books in 2020. So let's get into my favorite books of 2019. I organized the books between nonfiction and fiction. My first nonfiction that I absolutely adored in 2019 is Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark. This is a memoir written by the authors that I thoroughly enjoyed, and they are also the host of one of my favorite podcasts called My Favorite Murder. The podcast, in case anybody is wondering, is a true crime comedy podcast. Every episode, each one of them outlines or tells us about a different murder, and it's just a really enjoyable podcast. I've learned a lot. It's not to be taken super seriously, but it is really enjoyable. So now to get back to the book. So the book is called Stay Sexy, Don't Get Murdered, which is their tagline for the podcast. And this book kind of went into different stories from each of the women and their kind of journey into true crime and how they got into kind of where they are today. So it's super enjoyable. I would read anything by them that they've written. I love Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Stranger Beside Me by Ann Rule. This is a nonfiction true crime book, and this details Ted Bundy and his serial killer crimes. Ann Rule was a friend and colleague of Ted Bundy's. So we get a unique perspective from her and her encounters with Ted Bundy throughout this book. It is a little beefy, but is very much worth the read. I will tell you, there's a couple of things in here that made me nervous, even when I was reading it. It makes you think. So pick this one up if you are interested in true crime. Next, we're going to talk about my fiction books from 2019. The first fiction book from 2019 is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. So this is a fiction mystery thriller book, and it starts off with a camping trip, the first camping trip for this little girl, and while she's at camp, everyone else that she's bunking with in her cabin goes missing, and she ends up making some accusations about the owners of the camp and things like that, and they look everywhere for the girls and they can't find them. So the camp actually closes because of all the bad publicity that came with the girls going missing. So then we jump forward to adult version of this woman, and she is asked to come back to the camp, but as a counselor. So we follow her journey back into a world that she never pictured herself being back to. I really enjoyed this one. I read through it so quickly. I very much recommend it. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I picked up this book in 2019 hoping to love it, and I was not disappointed. This follows the story of a human who was taken from the human world and brought to Fae against her will. And she ended up growing up in Fae, and while she was there, she decided that she was going to do everything she could to fit in and prove that she is one of the Fae. So this story outlines her and her ambitions. Then she becomes frenemies with one of the princes, and we get a little look-see into their relationship and some schemes that they plot together. The next book, of course, is The Wicked King, which is the second book after The Cruel Prince in the Folk of the Air trilogy. The Folk of the Air, sorry. So The Folk of the Air is actually a trilogy. The third book came out at the end of 2019. I haven't read that one yet, but The Wicked King is the second book, and we continue on with the story. And if you like fantasy and you like Fae at all, or if you've read a Holly Black book and you loved it, this is your next stop. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. This is a fiction fantasy novel Goodreads also had horror listed as part of the genre, but I didn't feel like there's a whole lot of horror elements in here. This story follows a small village that is tucked away in the woods, and it is said that the woods around it are cursed. So cursed, in fact, that the town puts up iron fences around their houses and really protect themselves at night from what could be lurking in the woods around them. We follow a map maker who comes into the town to finish his maps, and he wants to be led into the mountains, but he can't find anybody to lead him in the mountains because no one will go in the woods except for this one girl whose father was a grave digger, and she's very used to the area and knows them very well. So we followed their story of going into the woods and potentially saving their town. So this one was a surprise for me, so how much I liked it and how quickly I went through it. So the next series I'm going to talk about is the Newsflesh series by Myra Grant. I listened to all 3 of this series on audiobook. Once I listened to the first book, I could not wait to get my hands on the second and third book. The first book in the series is Feed, the second book is Deadline, and the third book is Blackout. The story that we're following in the Newsflesh trilogy is that parts of the world broke out in this disease or virus, and it's turning them into zombies. And it follows this brother and sister who are news anchors, but they report on the zombies. So they go into high alert areas where there is a lot of zombie activity, and they report on the zombies in the area. They get a lot of footage of them messing with the zombies and things like that. I would compare it to our social media now, but with zombies. So it was really fun and different, and there's a lot of twists and turns throughout all 3 books. I think every single book had some surprise that you just did not see coming, and sometimes that can be really hard for me to not see something coming in a book, which is why I think I enjoyed these so much. So those were my top books of 2019. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't read any of these, I highly recommend them, of course. If you have any recommendations for me, please put them down in the comments. If you like this video and would like to see more content from me, please subscribe and hit that like button, and I'll see you guys next time.